Okay, let's talk about AI assistants like ChatGPT. I mean, they're everywhere now, right? And they're changing just about everything. How we work, how we learn. They can help us write, brainstorm ideas, solve problems. It's like having a superpower on tap. But is it possible we're outsourcing more than just our tasks? Maybe we're outsourcing our thinking. So we're going to dive into this really fascinating MIT study that looked at what actually happens inside your brain when you let an AI take the wheel.
You know, it's funny. The researchers who did this study actually started with this quote from Frank Herbert's Dune, of all places. Once men turned their thinking over to machines in the hope that this would set them free. But that only permitted other men with machines to enslave them. Wow, that's pretty heavy, right? It kind of sets a dramatic stage, suggesting that all this convenience, well, it might come with a hidden trade-off, one we haven't really stopped to think about.
And that really gets to the heart of what we're looking at here. We know AI is a powerful tool, no question about it. But is that power free? Or is there some kind of hidden cost, a cost to our own minds? That's the big mystery. And the answer, as these researchers found out, is literally hidden inside our own brains. So to figure this out, researchers at MIT set up this really clever experiment. You can almost think of it as a great essay showdown. They wanted to see in real time how using an AI writing tool actually stacks up against doing it the old-fashioned way. And not just by looking at the essays themselves, but by looking inside the brains of the people writing them. So here's the basic setup. They got 54 people to participate and split them up into 3 different groups. Each group got a different tool to use, or in one case, no tool at all. And the whole time they were writing, over multiple sessions, their brain activity was being monitored. Pretty cool, huh?
And the task itself was pretty simple, but definitely demanding. They had to pick a standard essay topic and then go. They only had 20 minutes to write a full essay using whatever tool they were assigned, and they had to do this 3 separate times so they could get used to their particular method. All right, so let's meet the competitors. First up, you have Team AI, and they could only use ChatGPT. Then you have Team Search. They could use Google, any website they wanted, but no AI chatbots. And finally, my personal favorite, Team Brain. They had nothing, no tools, just their own memory and wits. This was a true showdown between human-only and machine-assisted thinking.
Now, what's really interesting is that the first clue that something was different between these groups, it didn't actually come from the fancy brain scans. Nope, it came from a really simple question the researchers asked them after they were done writing. They just asked them, hey, how much of this essay do you feel like you wrote? And the answers were, well, they were black and white. Team Brain, the ones with no tools, they were like, yeah, 100%, that's all me. But Team AI, their sense of who wrote it was all over the place, totally fragmented. A lot of them felt like they'd maybe written half of it, and some felt like they had basically no claim to it at all. And that feeling, that psychological distance from your own work, it leads to a really critical question, doesn't it? If you don't even feel like you wrote the thing, do you even remember what it says? Does it stick in your brain? Well, the answer to that came back loud and clear. In the very first writing session, a whopping 83% of the people using ChatGPT could not quote a single sentence from the essay they had just finished writing. Let that sink in. The words were right there on the page, but they just weren't in their memory. And that gap between the groups just got wider over time. By the time they hit the third session, 100% of the folks in Team Brain and Team Search could accurately quote their own essays. Their memory was solid. But the AI group, a big chunk of them were still struggling. This was the first really big clue that the thinking process itself was fundamentally different.
Okay, so we've seen the behavior, but now for the really cool part. What was actually happening inside their heads while all this was going on? To see that, the researchers used EEG scans to literally watch how different parts of the brain were talking to each other during the writing.
So, what's an EEG? The simplest way to think about it is that it lets us see the symphony of the brain at work. You know, when different parts of your brain are all working together on something tough, like writing an essay, they start to sync up, they communicate. And the more connections we see, the stronger those signals are, Well, that means the brain is more deeply engaged in what it's doing.
And this right here is the smoking gun. Just look at the two images. On the left, you've got the brain of someone using the AI assistant. It's pretty quiet, right? Not a lot of chatter. Now look at the brain on the right. That's someone from the brain-only group. It is a symphony of activity. All those lines show intense, coordinated communication happening all over the brain. One brain is basically outsourcing the work, while the other is firing on all cylinders. So what does that difference really mean? Well, the brain-only group was doing what you'd expect. Deep internal processing. They were coming up with ideas, structuring them, and locking it all into memory. The LLM-assisted group, on the other hand, was doing something scientists call cognitive offloading. It's a great term. They were basically outsourcing the tough mental work. That led to a more passive process, just kind of integrating suggestions instead of doing the heavy lifting of creation themselves.
All right, but the experiment wasn't over. This is where it gets really interesting. For the fourth and final session, the researchers threw in a massive twist. They swapped the tools. Suddenly, Team AI had their crutch taken away and had to write with just their brains. And Team Brain? They were handed ChatGPT. And this whole twist was designed to test a fascinating theory called cognitive debt. The idea is just like financial debt. If you keep borrowing from a credit card to make life easier today, you eventually have to pay it back, right? And usually with interest. The theory here is that if you keep borrowing cognitive power from an AI, you might have to pay that debt back later, with your own independent thinking skills being weaker as a result.
So, the question becomes, what happens when the bill comes due? What happens when you take that AI safety net away? Can someone who's gotten used to it suddenly perform at the same level as someone who's been training their mental muscles the whole time?
And once again, the brain scans tell the whole story. Look at the image on the left. That's a practiced, unaided writer's brain. It's lit up, highly connected. Now look at the image on the right. This is a former AI user now forced to write on their own for the first time. See how much less active it is? It's like they couldn't just flip a switch and turn on those cognitive muscles they hadn't been using. The cognitive debt was officially coming due.
And the consequences weren't just a vague feeling, they were measurable. The former AI users showed way less coordination in their brain activity. Their ability to quote from their own essays? Still terrible. And get this part is wild. When they analyzed the actual text, they found that these former AI users were unconsciously reusing specific phrases from the old essays ChatGPT had helped them write. It's like the AI's writing style had literally been imprinted on them.
So, what are we supposed to do with all this? What's the big takeaway for you and me as we're all trying to figure out how to use these amazing tools every day? Well, the research actually gives us some pretty clear advice.
Look, the goal here isn't to say AI is bad, don't use it. Not at all. It's about being strategic. We have to recognize that there's a trade-off between making things easy right now and keeping our brains sharp for the long haul. The key seems to be practicing those core skills, planning, critical thinking without the AI's help. Then, bring the AI in as a collaborator, a partner, but not as a replacement for your own brain. It's about finding that balance between efficiency and engagement.
You know, one of the participants who got switched from the AI group to the brain-only group said it best. After having a write on their own, they reflected and said, "I was able to add more and elaborate more of my ideas and thoughts." How cool is that? By taking back the thinking work, they actually unlocked more of their own creativity.
And ultimately, that's the final question this whole thing leaves for you, for all of us. When you open up that AI assistant, are you just outsourcing your work, or are you outsourcing your thinking? Because these tools are only getting smarter, and the temptation to let them do the heavy lifting is only going to get stronger. And knowing what we now know about cognitive debt, that's a question we really need to ask ourselves every single time.